Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our new segment called Classics Corner, where we review old TV shows and films from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
Well, I was going to say part of hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Aunt Jay's, and you say welcome, but corner. But anyway, we're going to do two shows. We're going to do a vlog sort, which is essentially
episode by episode through classic sitcoms and.
So we're going to follow from the past and the future, which is the Blackadder versus with
not really versus, just sort of
with Red Dwarf. So we're going to talk about the first episode
of each series
of the Blackadder, first episode, which is called
The Fortune Telling.
The Fortune Telling. Now, this is actually quite enjoyable
Before
experience.
we go right into the episode itself, we want to talk about the history of it because it's Blackadder. There's a lot of fans of it. Okay, the main thing to talk about is how they wanted to avoid being Fawlty Towers 2.0.
I find that a bit weird because when I think of the Middle Ages, I think of the Hotel Mountain.
Well, the thing is, that's the very reason they went for the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
And made Blackadder.
Well, remember, a lot of temporal sitcoms was common in the thought, well, would it be more interesting, more larger-in-life adventure?
Well, think of it nowadays, how there's like 4 or 5 family sitcoms that are the same, and then they were so concerned about being similar, they changed the whole sitcom.
To the historical Middle Ages, for starters, which is, to be fair, is quite a neat idea. I mean, there's characters in there that was well there. So anyway, what's the single episode of the Blackadder?
Well, it's basically the backdrop of how between Richard III and Henry VII, the whole series is in between their reigns.
Yes, and it was about a scenario where you got Sir Edmund, which then was in the part of it, which became later the Blackadder.
The Prince Edmund.
The Prince Edmund, who became later, because he accidentally killed the King Henry III. Is it King Richard III?
Richard III.
Yeah, which is
because he's about to steal his horse in the middle of the battlefield later on.
Which then he avoided escape by blaming for someone else, and then because of that, he then got I have identity. We got to call ourselves
the
Black Vegetable. No, and then and then Baldur, which is this person, he's the smart one
in this series,
and it's like, oh wait, I have a better idea. Why don't we call the Blackadder? Yes, and then you see him transform to more wearing black clothing, and then more to his character. It feels weirdly more like a alter ego.
If you think about this compared to Blackadder, you're probably used to or heard of. It's like Mr. Bean as Blackadder.
In fact, anything, that's what it kind of is. I mean, I think they're trying to do is a goof, goof.
Originally, from the first pilot, it was going to be smart Blackadder from the original series, but they wanted to avoid Fawlty Towers, so they went for Mr. Bean-like.
Which is funny because later on they did try to be more like. I guess they're trying to.
I'm guessing Fawlty Towers was over by then.
I think because they're thinking of Blackadder the second, they're more. They know how to do because there were certain periods they can get away with different variety and settings, even though it's very more strict on this location. Either way, Blackadder, the first one. Now the characters, I do admit though, is set in historical settings, its environment, it has
medieval England.
I think what we're most memorable is the acting from certain characters, like Brian Blessed.
Honestly, the thing about Brian Blessed is
Brian Blessed, which is.
I'm curious, if you ever see a documentary based on Blackadder, like them reacting or remembering the old show, no one talks about Brian Blessed.
Brian freaking Blessed was in it! Like, you got Peter Cook in there, it's like...
Not even the fact that he was involved, just the fact...
Brian Blessed, like his performance, like... No, we were thinking about how rough the episode was.
No. It's just that they think of how different it was and
he looks like he was having fun. He's like this being, it's like, you're right, yes!
If you want your sitcoms to be remembered, you at least mention a Brian
they probably did mention a bit of it, but they don't think it was that.
No, they didn't.
I mean, they would mention Peter Cook, which is like a passed-on thing, but
his style of humour was similar to...
Which doesn't look like he was enjoying his role when he was in it.
He was breaking script every 5 seconds.
Oh, yes, great. And one word from using the Shakespeare. Well, what is great and of fame? Yes, great, you silly sod.
Scabby reptile.
Oh, I hate this script and win and no.
To be fair, I never saw Peter Cook before this, but he is good.
I mean, to be fair, he's a good actor. He's been made one of those. You probably know him from the sound of the character. You probably know him Arthur, who was a guy who's excellent player, but he also made the jokes about the one-legged joke. And he is known for during the 60s and 70s.
What do you think of this is more of an overall series thing. What about Baldric in the first series?
Well, he's a lot more smarter or more the man with the brains. I think the idea they're trying to go for is you got the goofy one, you got the brain one, and you got the gullible one. You basically got the leader who's a bit of a comical, and you got the. I think
he's the real genius in this series.
I mean, later in the seasons, he does get more and more the roles are a bit switched a bit.
With Ben Elton.
But essentially, the idea that he's a sidekick to Blackadder, and they do have this sort of like free duo. Technically, I mean, they do have mostly two, but it's really the later ones. But it's essentially free. You got the brains, you got the leader, and you got the.
Now the backdrop story for this is basically the Battle of Bosworth Field. That's where the main story happens.
So I don't know what you think of the episode.
Considering I'm more fan of the other seasons, this was one of my favourites from the first season.
I mean, I like how grand it is. It's like the initial music. I mean, this is from Howard Goodwall. It's like I mean, it's just me. It's just that kind of gravity.
Honestly, the opening scene is the best bit.
I mean,
that's not a bad thing. It's just the opening scene.
It just
really
feels grand and adventurous and larger than life, and it just seems like. I mean, even like performance.
The fact that executives hated this show and called it.
I don't know why. I don't think they hate. I think they just maybe ashamed of how embarrassing it is. But
how rough it is, maybe.
But I don't know. I just find the executive just like, come on, there's a lot of effort to it. There is fun elements of it. But we were young. What does that make? Look, man, I made Rourke. I'm not going to disown it. I don't make disown it. I mean, at least see the elements about it you enjoy. Mm-hmm. I mean, at least the idea what you got there is there. So I just think
the first episode, introduction to Blackadder.
It's really enjoyable. It is fun. I mean, at least the character, the setting. It's fun. The settings and all. Yeah.
You can tell. It may be similar to the original, but it's still got a lot of good humour in it.
Yes, absolutely. And
but now, Blackadder.
Right, we're going to future.
Many.
About 1,300 years of the future. Roughly, kind of. And we're going to start from a person, a straight man, and a Liverpudlian.
We are from Liverpool, by the way.
So up yours, America's going to keep going on about it. But I like the Red Dwarf. No, Liverpool. Okay. Anyway, the point is, Red Dwarf, which is a very sunny period, where it's about the story goes. Simply put, it's about a Liverpudlian who's the last man.
A mechanic aboard a spaceship.
Mechanic.
Well, technically called it.
Anyway, who've been sent into hibernation chambers for a crime. We bring a cat in the board, and accidentally there's been a radiation happening. He wakes up. He's the last human on the ship. His close worky colleague. He's now a hologram played River, and you have like a cat who's evolved from being a cat.
Who's now. Way monkeys evolved to humans, this cat evolves.
So and then they're setting up like a very dry computer AI, which is, to be fair, Holly.
To be honest, between you and me, it's not until the second season that Holly gains a real gimmick or personality.
But the thing, he has a personality in the beginning, where like, he's dead.
He's just
dead. He's like, what? They're dead. They're dead. They're all dead. So you're telling me that they're all dead?
They're dead, Dave.
It's like, they're dead, Dave. But the thing is, okay, what do you think of the scenario? What do you think of the character?
The setup is basically, imagine if you yourself were trapped in space, in a spaceship many years in the future.
Yeah.
It's basically saying that's what Lister is for you at the beginning.
I mean, to be fair, there are quite a lot of enjoyable elements about it. I mean, I like the characters. There's just something about enjoyable about the characters. But the simple way I could say about the whole thing for me is it's surprisingly it's smart, but it's surprisingly simple. I mean, compared to it's like it just feels plausible and logical. It feels like, okay, this is basically a 23rd or 24th or 22nd century ship set in millions of years in the future. So the world outside of there is unknown. So it makes it plausible because everything's so similar.
And to us, the ship itself is unknown.
Yes, so it is both worlds. It uses elements from the 80s and 90s technology, like videos and
the grey screens.
But the point is, at least it's set in a past ship in the future. So
how would you compare it to Blackadder?
Well, that's kind of like saying, do you like spacemen or cowboys? I mean, like fantasy or sci-fi, which is essentially basically Blackadder in some way.
Obviously, hard to say one or the other, but they're definitely two great I miss sitcoms doing these things where they had these grand setups rather than just being in suburbia.
They kind of did that in the early 2000s and mid 2000s, but I think they were going a bit awkward in their style, and they just sort of like, well, let's scrap that.
I mean, apart from a very childish sitcom, if you remember it, called My Parents Are Aliens, as far as I know.
The class thing I remembered in modern time with the grand setting with the interesting scenarios is Monty Booth, and that's not much.
Monty Booth?
Yeah. I mean, it's not bad, it just feels a bit...
That's the main reason for starting these vlogs.
Yeah.
For anyone wonders is, we miss sitcoms like this that have these grand settings.
It just feels like you're watching a film, and that's a compliment. It's like you're watching a grand scale. Like, I'm not watching a TV show. I'm watching a film. Maybe it doesn't
feel like a back and forth common sitcom, but it still feels better.
It feels like the grand. Even if you don't find the humour, at least see the character, the setting, the music, even the story. Which remember, you ever know that much story in sitcoms? Not much these days. It just feels like. Now you can argue that the setup is more interesting than the story.
That's all we can say. As far as Red Dwarf the End, is it a good start to the series?
Tremendously. I enjoy them tremendously. I enjoy just how simple it is, but also how plausible it's and I also like how that they're not trying to be. They're dope settings. Like Blackadder is about a sort of like underdog / rag to riches type man. He's like, I'm either plans the rule to being fame and fortune.
No, it's not really a plan. He just sort of stumbles into it.
Oh, accidentally with the first one, but the general series is him trying to get rag to riches or trying to get fame and fortune. Well, in Red Dwarf,
he is a common man.
Yeah, the common man, which is Dave Lisser, played by Craig Charles, which is often you have a little Poppy in space, but then again, it's quite present.
In fact, this is our general introduction to the vlogs. We'll come back later when we get deeper into both series.
But other than that, these are enjoyable, and also we'll talk more about these later. But I don't know but let's say Blackadder's good, and the Red Dwarf.
We miss sitcoms like this.
We do, and it's enjoyable.
Thank you very much.
You take care now.